Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time with Kauffman, the comfortable place to talk about women's leadership. Today's topic is Life Engineered with Linda Brennan. Hey, Linda.
Good morning, Maria. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show today. Life engineering is a proven approach to go from overwhelmed to accomplished. Linda helps us start with a blueprint for life. Stay on track with quarterly design reviews. Linda is on a mission to get the world out of react mode, one professional at a time. Before we get into Life Engineered with Linda Brennan, my name is Maria Kauffman and I'm a life coach. Today, I am done drinking my coffee already because I've been taking care of my daughter's dog for the summer. What are you drinking, Linda?
I'm a big Crystal Light iced tea girl after 1 cup of coffee.
Nice, perfect.
You wouldn't want to talk to me if I had 2 cups of coffee.
Right. I would say it's probably the same with me as well. Linda, tell us about your journey into the field of engineering.
Oh, you know how these things go. It's part plan and part happenstance. I am the first generation to go to college. So my parents really didn't provide much guidance other than very stressed out about the money. And so I took a scholarship to a liberal arts college with kind of the intent to go to law school. And I'm dating myself, but I loved Perry Mason. And that's no joke. That's why I wanted to become an attorney. And a friend of mine from high school came back, for first semester Christmas and said, "Oh my God, you have got to be an industrial engineer." I'd never even heard of that, right? My mom stayed at home. My dad was in advertising. So I did some research and no, there was no internet. And I thought, this is perfect. I mean, no joke. If I need to calm down or kind of process something, I will clean out my closet. My husband says I'm procrastinating, but there's really something going on there. So I researched schools that were good in industrial engineering, and it turned out that Georgia Tech was highly ranked, but it was a state school. So even though I was out of state, it was very affordable. So I ended up in Georgia, and this isn't on life engineering, but I think it's funny. And my first keg party, I'm being vivacious, talking up a storm. And at Georgia Tech, the ratio was like 4 or 5 to 1. So I'm surrounded by all these frat boys. And I finally take a breath. And one guy says, "You're not from around here. Where are you from?" And I thought, wow, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
That's so funny. So, but help us understand. So the friend that told you that you should get into industrial engineering, how did that, what made her say that?
Just very process oriented, good at math, very organized. And for people who don't know much about industrial engineering, it started, as you might think, at the beginning of the industrial age, which focused on efficiencies in manufacturing and manual labor, and over the years has really spread to man-machine interfaces and how to make people most effective. So quality might be something, logistics is a part of it, ergonomics is part of it. And my calling, I did work in manufacturing. That's another story. I was the only female in the department, and God almighty, every day we talked about NCAA basketball. I thought I would pluck out my eyelashes. And so when I graduated from school, I decided to go work for IBM, to use the computer as a machine and look how it impacted how effective people were, which was really interesting. Got my MBA, hit the glass ceiling. I don't know if you want me to go into that, but
yeah, would love it. Sure.
So, I was one of the youngest people in the company on executive compensation, but my title didn't match my impact. So I went to my boss, who, no joke, his favorite management book at the time was The Management Secrets of Attila the Hun. And I said, I think I'm ready. I think I've demonstrated that I'm ready for the next step. Here's what I propose. I see a lot of synergies in doing this, and I might even be able to reduce some of the overhead. And he listened, and he said, no, you are a really good manager. I think you should go to HR. And nothing against my HR colleagues, but at a consumer goods company, that was the kiss of death. Plus, I had the technical background. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm a little too perky. I don't know. But it's ridiculous. And
right. So it sounds like you had like had somebody else presented that same information. Like it sounded like a solid plan.
Oh, right. Wait. Okay.
So
I decided to go back to school to get my PhD. I thought that would give me more gravitas. I'm not sure that happened, but I focused on industrial engineering, but on white collar productivity, which is what I wanted to do all along. And I stopped by, to talk to some old friends. I stuck my head in my boss's office, and he said, that position you were talking about? I decided it was a good idea, and I gave it to Reggie. No lie. Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So it sounded like at this time you made this proposal, and then what on the side you went for the PhD at the same time?
No.
Okay.
I think now that there are part-time PhD programs, and there are doctorate programs that aren't as research-oriented as PhD programs are, but where I went, it was full-time. In fact, you couldn't accept any outside remuneration.
Oh, so you already had your PhD when you made that proposal to the boss?
No. Okay. I left.
Okay. Oh, okay.
To get the PhD because I was so fed up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Thankfully, my husband was really supportive. So
okay.
I went from secretary, staff, money to just being, a grunty graduate student.
How about
there was a little bit of a ego check there.
Right. So it's interesting because somebody must have noticed then some of your talents, before you left high school, when that friend noticed that you should get into industrial engineering.
Yeah, it was actually a he, and he was really, really encouraging. And,
Interesting. He saw that in you.
Yeah. I wouldn't say he was a mentor, but he was a friend, and I think you pick your friends carefully, right?
Right. Nice. Because obviously you had the capability, clearly.
Yeah.
So then you get a PhD. Awesome. I mean, that's pretty obviously notable. What was your plan after getting the PhD as far as your career was concerned?
Well, I was going to travel the world with Booz Allen. Now, Booz Allen didn't know it, but I did. And work on white collar productivity and business reengineering and, all that stuff. But I had a baby in the middle of my dissertation. So I ended up going the academic route, front burner, and then would do some consulting on the side until empty nest. And then I left a tenured, full professor, great benefits, 9-month teaching schedule to become self-employed, because everybody does that.
Wow.
Again, my husband is an awesome partner.
Oh, that's nice. So at that time, with that decision, it's not, what I find as well is that there's this logical piece that makes sense to stay the course. But there's something bigger that pulls you out into this self-employment space. What can you share with us about that?
I will say it took, I think of it as bravery.
Yes.
Like just about every woman I know, I get crises of self-confidence. But it was what I had wanted to do all along.
Oh.
And I love teaching. I'm back in the classroom again, part-time. But, you just get tired of doing, the same thing. And I had done it all. Dean's office, leading a university-wide task force, publish, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know that I was burned out, but I was definitely bored. And it was funny. I used to go on these spiritual retreats in Georgia, and it's silent, during meals and community time. But you get to meet with a spiritual advisor. And she said, Linda, you sound like a pot-bound plant. And the light bulb went off. I thought, that's exactly what I am. I need to spread not my wings, but my roots. So, I did it, and I've been really, really happy. And I have a great life, but, it took a while to create it. But
yeah, so it sounds like
brave and patient, which is not an easy combination.
Yeah, true. Especially in the hustle and bustle. So tell us about Life Engineered.
Sure. You and I were talking a little earlier, because I had worked out as an industrial engineer since I was interested in the white collar end of things. I worked in a business school. Industrial engineering can be very technical, where you're optimizing, mathematical models. And, that was fun while I was in school, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I ended up in the business school and, worked in the corporate world. I consulted with businesses. So I became a business coach. And what I found was, and I specifically worked with women who were revenue producers. I think that's how you and I found each other. And what I found was a lot of guilt, a lot of ambition, and no bandwidth. So I retrenched a little bit, and I thought, okay, here's where I really get to focus on white collar productivity, but perhaps in a different way than I thought about it. So what I do, I am a little bit like the kid with the hammer that sees everything as a nail. I see everything as systems. When I teach strategy, it's a process. When, in the organization is a system and an environment. When I teach leadership, it's a process of leadership development. So I decided that rather than being a life coach, I still consider myself to be a business coach, but I don't believe in work-life balance, right? You really have to integrate it. and just in a small way, right? You have to stop working in the middle of the day to take out the dog,
Right.
right? You know,
Right.
or people put dogs in puppy daycare. Well, you know, it's analogous to having children. So what I do is a planning session with a client that is kind of strategic. And what I really, really, really try to do with this is help them figure out metrics, because a good strategic plan has metrics so you can evaluate your progress. And that's a big part of overcoming that guilt, because you can feel a sense of progress, but more importantly, you become more realistic. Like, really, I had an attorney who billed $375, $400 an hour, and she was doing her own laundry. And she was moving, so she was packing her own boxes. And, you know,
Something wasn't adding up.
Wasn't billing enough hours. You know, there's a solution to this. Does doing the laundry make you a good mom? You know, it's not for me to decide for her, but I'm going to ask that question.
Yeah.
I joke, but, you know, I feel really good about how I approached being a working mom. Yes, I took a different career path than I originally intended, which gave me more flexibility. But, you know, getting tenure is not a cakewalk, right? You know,
Right.
And I'm writing peer-reviewed papers just about every year, blah, 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 blah. So I would say, you know, if we started the week with fruit salad and clean underwear, and I had, you know, X number of meals a week with my son, I was doing good. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Right. So it's kind of like getting grounded. I love to, you know, in my world, you know, I'm an electrical engineer.
Right?
Sometimes there's these, right? So there's these analogies that I can take from a logical place and bring them into leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And any more conversation around the balance thing? Talk to us a little bit more about that, because for me, I know too, I can be a very intense person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like, you know, most of the girlfriends that I grew up with. I'm definitely an outlier. So
Right.
balance to me is going to look different. It's going to feel different. It's going to come around different. So I like how you talked about that. Because
I like to, people always, you know, will sort of, time management, which is, I mean, that's, you have money and you have time. That's all you have, right? And the idea is to understand what you're trying to accomplish, what's important to you, and then invest your time. So I talk with my clients about the return on time invested. And we will take a week and we'll walk through a process of evaluating your commitments, how to make those, you know, exceptionally worthwhile, and then how to prioritize the things that are important but not urgent. I really like the Eisenhower matrix of urgent versus important. In fact, if you look at my logo, quadrant 2 is a little bigger than all the others, because it, you know, you're not going to work on a book or a certification or your health if you don't make the time. So, big believer in a block schedule. You know, I give myself a couple of hours, a couple times a week for what I call quadrant 2 stuff. And it's going to change from week to week. And the way that works is you go back to the strategic plan and you say, all right, what do I hope to accomplish in the next 90 days, right? The way, my analogy is, You don't eat a pizza all at once, right? You cut it into slices, unless you live in Chicago where they cut it into squares, which I don't yet because I grew up in New York. But you cut it into slices, but you still don't eat a whole slice in one bite. So then you have to break it down into those bite-sized pieces. So the quarterly plan and objectives is the slice. And then week to week, you figure out what bite you can fit in your schedule. And it's really as simple as that. If you, something urgent and important comes up, you move the time. Worst case, it pushes over to next week. If something continually pushes over with the client, then we have the conversation about procrastination, because much of procrastination stems from perfectionism, right? If you can't do it perfectly, you're not going to start it. But sometimes you're procrastinating because deep down you really don't want to do this. You're just what I call shooting on yourself, right? Okay, maybe we should take it off the plate and reset about what's really important to us. So that's where the quarterly check-ins come in. And then from a peer approach, I do, the twice a month. It's not coffee with Kauffman, but it's a virtual lunch meeting where a peer group, not category exclusive, will meet and talk about successes, challenges, which are bottlenecks in a process approach, and then we figure out, as a group, it's not just me saying, well, have you thought about this? I call them supportive accountability group encounters, SAGE.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Yeah.
So I love the quarterly design review. Basically there's a plan and a check-in to kind of keep you on track. I do find it interesting too, at least certainly from my experience, I could get into this role of being a professional and handling my day job. And sometimes that meant, I'm basically, managing multi-million-dollar projects,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at least for me, I guess, along the way, certainly in the earlier times, coming out of that environment and then, kind of having this balance or this life outside of work, I found was almost like this whole different world. And it took me a while as well, to kind of figure out, I find it interesting that I can be so successful and be this way in my career, and then kind of come out of that career space into more social settings and different environments and almost be like a fish out of water.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially with the technical background, right? And I'm of the generation, where it was a big decision whether to stay at home or go back to work. And, still to this day, though, there's a whole exodus of women out of the corporate world who start their own businesses because they need to have more flexibility. But then they go from earning, six figures to, $75,000 a year, which again is their choice, kind of, because the corporate world can be really inflexible. And that's another thing with the time management and the challenge of, integrating work and business. Think of it this way, it's this concept of margin. And, you don't write to the edge of the paper because you'll fall off the edge of the paper. Financially, if you don't have a buffer, when you need new breaks, suddenly, you're bankrupt, or God forbid, you have a medical issue. Time is the same way. My son went to the emergency room. We had chicken pox, we had strep throat, stuff happens. And if you don't give yourself that margin, then you just fall further and further and further behind.
Right.
Sometimes quadrant 2 gets displaced by chicken pox or strep throat or whatever. And yeah, if you schedule meetings from 8 to 8, think about how jammed up your schedule's going to be when you get back.
Right. And then on top of that, you were talking about how you've got, maybe a lawyer, billing at $400 an hour and then still doing, their laundry themselves. I find that interesting too, in that a lot of times, we kind of get on the hamster on the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to see outside and be like, oh my goodness, why couldn't I see this? Why couldn't I question this as well? So it's help us understand how you get into that environment where you can kind of help someone wake them up, and other than, how do you get them into your program is what I'm asking.
Well,
or getting noticed.
I'm not sure this is the question, so push me if I'm off track. But I'm sure you see it all the time where people start the day looking at their phones, right? They plug them in next to their beds, they get up, and the first thing is, what do I have today? What emails have come in? Now, if you're checking email, at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning or whenever you get up, you are already in react mode, right? Reply is reaction. So I really try to help them with that, hygiene. And, every other article about time management is minimize distractions and interruptions, check your email a couple of times a day. It's not rocket science or industrial engineering or electrical engineering, right?
Right.
But you get into these habits that are really bad time hygiene. So I try to say, okay, maybe once or twice a week, you don't do that. And then at the top of your day, you allow an hour to work on what that is that you want to do. They have to want to change. So I can suggest an approach. It's up to them to implement it. So,
Yes.
The last thing I want to do is make somebody feel guilty. But if they're not happy, there has to be enough tension to really want to change.
Yeah. Any magic formula?
You're asking.
No, that's actually perfect. That is exactly what I'm saying, is that because sometimes we're, once again, like that hamster on the wheel.
Yeah.
We can't even see what's happening inside of our own lives or kind of recognize that. So it's just kind of like at least being saying, hey, questioning them and saying, would you want to consider? Right. We don't want to convince anybody. We can't control anybody, but hey.
Right. Is this really that important to you? Right.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about the importance of those quarterly check-ins. That's part of it, right?
Right.
It's just making sure, have you been investing that time in what's important to you?
Yeah. I do love that. Invest your time instead of spending it.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, partly, we're all under these many influences, right?
Yeah.
Over time, we grow up in these influences, and then we get into college and then into our careers, and there's influences layered over influences that you kind of put these layers on. And I guess it's on some level, it's then helping them take off a layer and just questioning and considering a different approach or a different way to look at things, or something out of the norm.
Yeah. What do you really, really want?
Yeah.
What do you think you should want?
Yeah. And that's a lot of times, I would imagine, getting them out of that react mode.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy, and not everybody really wants to change, but it's possible.
It is
I
absolutely
had another client who, was starting her business, and, she had her daughter in camp like 2 or 3 hours a day. And so when we looked at what she was trying to accomplish in, 6 to 10 or 15 hours a week, she's like, this isn't feasible, right? It's her decision. I can just take her through a process to evaluate her choices.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Help us understand where you are as far as you're driving change for women's leadership for sure.
Yes.
You're helping us change and engineering our lives. What direction do you think women's leadership is going to go? The more women that we can uncover some of these life engineered solutions.
We may be in for a rocky few years considering what's going on. But, more women are graduating from college, from law school, from medical school. So the tide is going to change where, some people criticize Sheryl Sandberg's book about leaning in, but I thought it was spot on. You get married, you have the choice to have someone who's really a partner, right? My husband and I, dads don't babysit, they father, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh.
For the
Hopefully,
first
right?
year, I was largely at home or teaching, at night, and he'd get home from work and I said, okay, I'm off duty. We're now a team. Okay. I'm not still the parent in charge. And really, one of the things we did for a fair amount of time was we call it parent on duty. So on Saturdays, we'd split the day. And one of us would have, 8:30 to 12:30 or 7:30 to 12:30. And the other person would have 12:30 to 5:30. So you could go sit in a cafe. You could get your hair done. Read a book, anything that you wanted to do, no guilt, time to yourself. And, it worked, and
wow.
We're both very close to our kids. Well, our son and our bonus daughter, my daughter-in-law.
Nice. That is, I have to say, simple, but kind of revolutionary. And I don't know, had I been able to entertain that idea, that never dawned on me to do like a half and a half, like on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Come together as a team, figure it out. I'm sure there's many different ways you can kind of, slice that or figure those roles out. But I'm telling you what, had I entertained and at least even heard of that idea, that would have been a life changer for me back in the mothering days.
Yeah. Well, to go back to the idea of leadership, when I teach leadership, one of the first things I talk about is self-leadership. Because if at heart, I believe leadership is influence, right? You're influencing people towards a goal. Well, if you're not doing that to yourself,
yes,
you're not, people don't want to follow people who are just a hot mess, right?
Right.
Or always scrambling, or, always apologizing at being late, or, canceling at the last minute. And that comes from, the quadrant 2, being clear about your goals, but it's also about how you lead at home and how you lead in your network. And, so I was pretty intentional about building a good support network. So I had, a partner, a husband who was a partner. I had some people that I could trust with my son. I found a good place for him to be around other kids. It's being intentional.
Being intentional. Yeah. So I think I agree with you. We're probably going to go through a little bit of a rocky road here as women's leadership pushes the edge and changes. The more we can lead ourselves from this personal leadership standpoint and entertain different options and ideas for living your best life. Because I think there still is a lot of these influences that make it difficult for us to pave our own paths and to be that best leader. I think, at least from my perspective, I think that's part of that bumpy road. Any comments on what you think the bumpy road is, and where is, once we come out of the bumpy road, what can life look like in the future?
Oh gosh, what a good question. Well, I can tell you what I think undergirds. I don't have a solution, but here's what I think about it. I think that we have lacked the opportunity, in government. I think, the church, a lot of places that provide the scaffolding to our lives still are very underrepresented by women. Now, that even goes to the corporate world. And I think a lot of it has to do with this mommy track, right? You have to decide, what kind of mother you want to be, but more often than not, it's the woman who becomes the primary caregiver. And what do? You step out or you step back from the workforce. So our progression up the corporate ladder, up the billability and realization in a professional services firm, our ability to govern, it's a hard thing very systemic to overcome. And I don't have an answer. I mean, really, it has to be a personal choice, but I think that's, especially, I feel so badly, we're educated, we're financially comfortable, you think about these single moms with low socioeconomic status, no support network, no margin, and no way really to overcome. And you take away even more of their choices.
Yeah. So more choices, and women that have the opportunities to get into leadership are definitely an influential edge to pave that path, help us get over this bumpy road, because it is going to mix in some innovation and some creativity and some change.
Yeah. And with my teaching, I really try to invest in that next generation, and not just the women, but, to lighten the men to say, this is a way it could look. It's the way I would want it to look, and just try to get people to be a little more thoughtful.
Yeah. And part of that might be, just, maybe more men. And I know some men who are the primary caregivers, to the children. They are, staying at home with the children. So that may be a whole edge that grows to help everything become completely different as we lead differently in the future.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. And really, you can lead from anywhere, right? But I think you and I are talking about, capital L leadership in our society, and that's where you've got those systemic things that have to be overcome.
Yeah. Because of course, I like to advocate hire women and buy from women.
Yes,
That alone could be a life changer and get us into a whole different, and I think a lot of that is going on right now. It is a great time for women's leadership.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah. So is there an inspirational quote that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, that was a tough question, but here's the one I picked. I believe this is from Vivian Green. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain.
I love that quote. Like I shared with you, that was hanging on my wall in my kitchen as I raised my daughter. I think that's a powerful, powerful, playful attitude to bring to life as we do get through some of these challenges in the bumpy road.
You have a choice on your thoughts, your words, your actions, and stuff is going to happen.
Stuff is absolutely going to happen. I love it. Thank you so much, Linda, for being on the show with us today.
It's been an honor and a delight.
Coffee Time with Kauffman is the comfortable place to discuss women's leadership because I am on a mission to help the world discover the truth about what women are capable of. When you are ready for your leadership mastery makeover, go to mariakaufman.com and click on Consult a Coach, where you can schedule time with me for an empowerment session. Have a great week. Enjoy your adventures and journey responsibly. And thank you so much again, Linda, for being on the show.